Hi guys, this is Nathara, and today I want to talk about the Milgram experiment and the various replications of it throughout time. Really briefly, the Milgram experiment was conducted by a Yale University professor named Milgram, Stanley Milgram, to see whether or not subordinates during the Holocaust should be held responsible for their part in things, or if they were really just doing what they were told. So what he did is he set up this experiment where he would invite participants to participate, and unbeknownst to them, they're the only participant in the experiment. Everyone else is an actor. They're going to take the role of a teacher, an actor is going to take the role of a learner, and another teacher is going to take the role of a scientist. The scientist instructs the participant that as teacher, they are to administer a test to the learner, and in order to discover the effect of pain on learning, every time the learner gets a question wrong, they are to zap them from a machine that the learner is hooked up to. The machine has voltages set from 15 volts all the way up to a deadly 450 volts. And throughout the experiment, as the voltage increases, every time the learner gets a question wrong, the learner protests loudly, screams in agony, and eventually falls silent. When they fall silent, the learner is instructed by the scientist that a non-answer is to be considered a wrong answer and to continue administering volts. Doing a survey of senior level Yale psychology majors, he asked them what percentage of people they thought would go all the way up to the 450 volts. And the average of all the estimates comes out to be 1.2%. So the seniors at Yale in the psychology department have decided that somewhere between 1 and 2% of the participants are actually going to go all the way up to 450 volts. After conducting the experiment, Stanley Milgram discovered that 65% of the participants went all the way to 450 volts. Now, that's not to say they did it without protest, because in the original experiment, everyone protested. And the scientists would reassure them they aren't causing any damage and the experiment must be continued. So they would go all the way to the 450. The experiment has been redone in almost every country by a wide variety of scientists on all sorts of different sections of society. So the original experiment was conducted on Yale students. So it's also been conducted in busy cities, in more laid-back cities, in towns, rural areas, church-going folk versus not church-going folk. People compared races to see if they react the same way, and both genders. So this experiment has really been replicated, and according to all the replications, despite the different mix and match that they do with society, the numbers still come out to 65%. Now, there's a lot of different interpretations people have made about what exactly these results mean for us as a human species, because it doesn't even just pertain to our society, it was universal across all of them. So, one of the interpretations that people have come up with is that people feel a need and a desire to conform. They don't like to confront, they don't like to rock the boat, they don't like to upset the system. They want to conform and travel about peacefully through their day. And as such, they don't protest, and they continue to do the experiment, eventually killing the learner. Another interpretation is that they see, in a situation like this, where they've been asked to do something by somebody else, So a situation similar to like having a job or something, having a role in an organized group, or any of those kind of situations, that they don't see themselves as responsible for what's going on once they have committed to accepting a role. They view themselves more of a tool of whoever is above them in the hierarchy. Another interpretation is that people believe experts unquestioningly, and whatever someone who is a so-called expert says should be believed. And while, I wish that was true, it really isn't. The last major interpretation that people have come up with is that people have a learned helplessness. This is where we've been taught by our culture, societies, parents, whatever, that we ourselves are helpless to change the situation we're in. And this makes us be more complacent. Now, the upside of this experiment is that it was only 65 and not like 80 or 90. But still, to me, 65 is a really huge number. And if you've ever seen any of the reenactments, there's a really good one from Darren Brown's The Heist. And he came up with a 66% conformity. You, of course, scream at the screen, and you're saying, don't do it, don't do it. Or you're watching a movie, and some evil mastermind has asked somebody else to do something, and their reason for doing it is because no one disobeys so-and-so, or whatever. They might get fired or something. So yeah, that I find is really disturbing. The whole idea that people just listen and obey. I myself, I was lucky. I was raised by two parents who distrusted authority and tended to follow their instincts on a lot of things. So I would like to think that if I were put in that situation, unknowingly, I hadn't already learned about the Milgram Experiment, that I would protest. And I think I probably would, because I also have this thing against authority. But this really brings us back to the idea that everyone should be responsible. These are not excuses, these interpretations, the conformity, the helplessness, all that. You have now heard me say it. I have told you about the experiment. So no longer can you say, oh, I've learned that I'm helpless and I can't do anything, because at any time, those participants, those teachers, could have simply refused to hit the button. And if they didn't like the scientist talking to them, they could have gotten up and walked out the door. So know that despite appearances, you have choices. You have your morality. You know what you think is right and what you think is wrong. And some of you like to call it ethics instead, and that's fine. But no matter what, you are responsible for your actions. So if you think you're doing something bad or evil and you don't like it, then don't do it. Of course, I will make the caveat that there are really creative circumstances where maybe you actually don't have a choice. But for the most part, in regular everyday life, we have choices, and it's our responsibility to make those choices and stand by our choices and feel good about our choices. And so that's what you, as an individual, need to remember. This is especially huge when it comes to things like witchcraft and Wicca, and most religious beliefs, is that no matter what, you, the individual, is responsible for what you do. And when it comes to magic and witchcraft, that makes you just that much more powerful, because you can stop what you do or you can do something different, and it's just up to you.